Reuters. You see, I was involved with many companies. And I want to give you some personal opinions. So you will see 3 slides that are not based on any evidence, but my personal opinion. Nobody does that anymore, but I have some opinions, so I'll give them to you. By the way, there was a great lecture by Jill some weeks ago at the ECHO, and I'm sure she would be much more suited to give you this lecture, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm glad that I have such a small audience, because Jill's lecture was in front of 2,500 people. And this was really amazing because everybody listened, and this is something you usually won't have at lectures. At least I don't have that. Now, there are lots of drugs in IBD evolving in recent years. I mean, we have had the first anti-integrin with vedolizumab in 2014, but since 2018 with tofacitinib, the first JAK inhibitor was placed into our hands, and now we have also new anti-P19 therapies, anti-IL-23 therapies, and we have the S1P1 inhibitors. And I'll start with those. So sphingosine 1-phosphate is a lipid mediator, and it binds to a receptor. And as soon as this receptor is blocked or taken up into the cell, the gradient doesn't exist anymore. So lymphocytes don't migrate to this gradient of sphingosine 1-phosphate. And so those substances that are always called Asimot as an ending, they block lymphocytes from migrating into the gut. Now the companies all will tell you that they arrest lymphocytes in the lymph nodes. Surprisingly also, this is not supported by data because there was no correlation with peripheral lymphocyte counts and the efficacy of those drugs in the clinical trials. So there must be something going on with lymphocyte migration. Certainly they don't migrate into the inflamed mucosa as well as they do without those drugs, but it's not really the mechanism that companies will tell you that they're arrested in the lymph nodes. Most likely the migration is inhibited in the tissue of interest in the intestine. Now, one of those S1P1 agonists or inhibitors that is approved is oxanimod, and here are the results of the True North study, and they also show you the relation of patients that go into remission with this new oral small molecules, small drugs. You see here that you have like 18.4% of patients going into remission, and the delta to placebo is about 12%. So around 20% of patients that will have remission, but also 50% that have clinical response. It's not too bad, but it's also not overwhelming to my opinion. And now we come to the first personal opinion. S1P1 agonists will be mainly effective in ulcerative colitis. They seem not to work as well in Crohn's disease. Their potency is comparable to adalimumab or ustekinumab in ulcerative colitis. And then when you look at the delta to placebo and the amount of patients that achieve remission or response, the only problem we have in real life is they may reduce the heart rate, so you need an ECG to look at the QT time, and you need an ophthalmologist because you need this exam before you start the drug, because they can cause a macular edema. And as we at our university hospital have to wait around 2 months until we get an ophthalmologist exam, it's really delaying the therapy, and this has caused some problems in putting patients on this drug. The next big group of new drugs are the so-called JAK inhibitors. The Janus kinases are kinases that are located in the intracellular compartment, and they are associated with a number of receptors like IL-12, IL-23, IL-6 receptor. And the first approved JAK inhibitor is tofacitinib, that is approved for ulcerative colitis but failed in Crohn's disease. And there are a number of new JAK inhibitors coming. One of them is filgotinib from Galapagos and upadacitinib from AbbVie. And they are JAK1 specific. So that means they don't have this broad range of inhibition of cytokine signaling. They are more specific, and also they should have less side effects as compared to tofacitinib. There's one problem, the EMA, but also the FDA filed a warning. This is brand new, November 11th, 2023. And they say that their pharmacovigilance risk assessment tells us that patients that are aged above 65 have an increased risk of major cardiovascular problems. Those who smoke or have done for a long time in the past, and those that are at an increased risk of cancer shouldn't get check inhibitors. So that's quite a big group of patients, of course. The only problem is this warning is just based on tofacitinib data. So there are no data with upadacitinib and no data with filgotinib that would show that there is an increased risk of cardiovascular events. So the FDA and the EMA made an extrapolation, which they never do when it's about efficacy, right? But they did it here with side effects, so I'm not sure how concerned I am about those potential side effects of the one specific check inhibitors. Now, I also have a personal opinion about check inhibitors. So upadacitinib from AbbVie works both in ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease and works well, but very well. Response rates of up to 80%, remission rates of more than 40%, also in Crohn's disease. Upadacitinib is one of the first drugs that even works after patients have failed several therapies, even biological therapies, so they may have failed 2 or 3 biologics, and still upadacitinib works as it would be a naive patient. Tofa and filgotinib failed in Crohn's disease trials, and they will most likely be only approved for ulcerative colitis, which shows some differences in efficacy, to my opinion. And the drug warning, well, the risk in IBD patients has never been documented. So the risk for major cardiovascular events comes from a group of rheumatology patients that were older, that had other associated diseases. So we use, for example, Rinvoq, which is upadacitinib, and a big number of IBD patients without any side effects we have seen so far. So when you ask me for my opinion, I think it's in IBD, it's pretty safe. You need 45 milligrams for a start of therapy, but then later on you can treat with 30 milligrams. And the third big group of new therapies are the anti-IL-23 therapies, and everybody has told us that this is a huge step forward as compared to ustekinumab, which targets both IL-12 and IL-23. So the new anti-P19 antibodies, guselkumab from Janssen, risankizumab from AbbVie, mirikizumab from Lilly, and praziquimab from Astra, they are only targeted at IL-23. And everybody told us this will be an advantage because we don't have side effects that we see with the dual inhibition of P40, which is done by ustekinumab Stelara. Now, when we look at one of those antibodies, risankizumab for Crohn's disease, you see that, well, the clinical remission rates are quite good. Here in Crohn's disease, up to 40% remission. This is, I think, quite some effect that we have to see here. Janssen did a comparison study where they also went for Crohn's disease and looked at different dosages and compared it to ustekinumab. And everybody would have expected that the new P19 antibodies are much better than the ustekinumab, than the Stelara. And what you see here is that the lowest dosage seems to have some advantage, but this was not significant. So in fact, they couldn't find a benefit over ustekinumab in those patients in Crohn's disease. It might be different in ulcerative colitis. Now, there's also interest in doing combination therapies, and this is the VEGA trial sponsored by Janssen. And what they did was golimumab, an anti-TNF antibody, guselkumab, the anti-P19 antibody, and a combo therapy of anti-P19 and anti-TNF. And what you see here is that the combo really reaches high levels of response with respect to those ulcerative colitis patients. You have 83% in the Congo of response rates. That's amazing. That's one of the highest response rates I have ever seen. But of course, you have 2 antibodies, and when you look into the long-term data that have been presented at ECHO, after 52 weeks, they stopped the golimumab and just treated with the anti-B19 antibody, and what you see is that this additional response is lost. So you end up with just the response to one of them. So you would need to have this response rate ongoing, you would need to have a co-treatment, which is quite expensive. So my personal opinion, anti-B19 antibody are safe and efficient new option to treat IBD. In CDs, there seems to be no big advantage over ustekinumab and anti-P40. In UC, the new anti-B19 antibodies may be better than ustekinumab. They are better when we look into the data, but due to their safety, they may be used for a combination approach once they differentiate. So this is the Crohn's disease pipeline. You see this upadacitinib is soon to be approved, or is approved by the FDA, and the emapalumab is soon to be approved. And then we come to the B19 antibodies that are partially already approved, like risankizumab, Skyrizi from AbbVie, and then we have perhaps the S1P inhibitors. And here's also the widest pipeline. Again, the B19 antibodies are going to be approved soon, and we have the approval of the new check inhibitors and the S1P ones. Despite all that, there's a therapeutic ceiling in drug development in UC. You see here the delta as compared to placebo. It's not that we will have such a huge breakthrough therapy despite all those new drugs. So how will the pipeline translate into clinical practice? I would say recent studies have demonstrated that we have new drugs with distinct mode of action for the treatment of UC and Crohn's disease. They include those S1P1 inhibitors, therapies directed against IL-23 and JAKs. They are soon to come into clinical practice. Their role in treatment algorithms has still to be determined. Combination therapies will provide and improve the efficacy of IBD therapy, I think. Another personal opinion, what I see with upadacitinib is really amazing, and this will be certainly one of the partners in many combination therapies. So I think, to my opinion, this is one of the best developments of the new drugs we have. But also patient preferences and pricing may play an important role for the choice of IBD treatment in the future. And because I was on time, just 1 or 2 additional slides. Final remark, new treatment option, new treatment targets may not necessarily be better, and you should be really cautious with those slogans that you hear from the industry: treat to target, mucosal healing, window of opportunity, histological healing, or disease clearance. To me, when we can just achieve like 20% of mucosal healing, even in the CALM study, I think we should forget about those slogans, especially disease clearance. They are all nonsense. And here's one amazing study, the STARDUST study, which I just wanted to show you because it compared intensive treatment, treat to target versus standard of care. And the orange bars are the standard of care group, and the blue bars are treat to target group. And what came out of the STARDUST study with respect to, for example, mucosal healing, was that the standard of care treatment always was better than those treat to target approaches. So be cautious with what you hear sometimes from the industry. Disease clearance is something I really hate this term, because we will never see, at least I will not see that during my career, which will only last for 5 more years. Thank you so much.